globalization could have or has impacted the film, and how do you feel it would impact the local film industry in general?
Right. So as you give a quick definition, globalization is really a movement of ideas, human behavior, culture, religion, data from one place to another geographically. The reason why God Loves the Fighter had the impact it did was because of globalization. You had a director, Damien Marcano, born, grew up in Mova, went to the States, tried something and it didn't work out. Then he said, listen, I'm an artist, I like to paint. From paint he went to photography, from photography he went into the music video. And upon fate, left a pretty comfortable life in ATL to be in the heart of Hollywood to see where quality is. Invested in a red camera, but if you know anything about technology, that's where the buck stops for film, digital film. And he invested in one of that to come back to Trinidad to make a film in Trinidad. So all along that was the plan. But that plan had to give him exposure beyond Trinidad, beyond what we had available to us in our film industry at that point in time. So even in the way the script was written, it was original ideas trying to depict his homeland Trinidad. But yes, his lens would have been a bit more focused than ours because this is all we know. He had the vantage point of being in Trinidad and the vantage point of looking at Trinidad from LA. So when he had to write the script, he wrote what he would have wanted to hear about Trinidad while not in Trinidad.
Okay, and on that point, Lyons, as it relates to globalization, a mistake we make is to think that is a recent phenomenon. Of course, there are certain ways that it intensified and certain representation of globalization we may be more aware of. But one of the key elements, as you mentioned, is technology helped change the industry in that I read one camera, whereas instead of having an entire set or certain exclusive form of technology at certain prices, it is affordable once you have that investment. You can treat it as an investment. The same way we have SLR cameras and we see the potential for it. So that is one thing that we should be having with globalization allowed to have. Which create a policy framework in a way that certain goods come into the country as well. A second thing is that we also expose the standards. International standards by which films are, not just in the cinema, but even in creative enterprises, people who do short films and so on, which help us to have a more informed opinion and also expectations for ourselves and what we think is good. So understand you have a type of paradox. Every day you go on YouTube and you can get 720 in terms of HD, a high definition film. Even up to 1080, right? Pixels. Yet the broadcasting standard for local television is still in standard definition. So aesthetically, you have a division between what it is you see and you like. When we talk about local film, the local film inferior. It's not just content, even in the presentation of it could be inferior, technological. And last, and that's an important point to raise, Damien, is something that there was not recent phenomenon, the role of diaspora. The diaspora has lobbying power for you in these metropolitan countries.
This is what we want to see.
Exactly. And that was always the link for artists to move away, to have this song, they hit abroad. And what we saw is a real connection with diaspora, a young man from Mova who went away and had the skill set, the mindset to prepare him fit. Because when you say a local film, is it a local blockbuster film and your budget is 100,000 TT dollars? Then how you can say the local film? What is a local film industry when you have a film industry predicated on billions or millions of dollars? When we don't talk about film theory as in Cuba or France and Martinique and Guadeloupe in the department. So we have to really look at what is film for us, and that is where I see like globalization is just an element involved with it, and I think Lyons was 100% right on what he saw.
Now you talked about the diaspora creating a link for us internationally. And you made a very important point, because in terms of even reggae music, which is something people don't understand, is really because Jamaicans have such a large diaspora in the US and other territories, they're able to basically expand in that way. We have people locally studying film, for example. Maybe not in these, they wouldn't have the same story like Damien, for example, but do you see it as the film industry and globalization has created some type of employment for them? or maybe opportunities for them in the long term?
When we say industry, I would suggest we use it loosely because we have a semblance. So to be politically correct, we say film industry, but functionally we don't have a film industry. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because we are still in our infantile stages of developing our art, which is Caribbean art because we are Caribbean nations. So we are still figuring out how we want to shoot our vantage points. We are still figuring out how to depict our characters. So everything wouldn't be organized as a real film industry, but we do have a film industry. In that, we have embarked on a journey in creating a market from ourselves for ourselves.
I'm glad I raised the point of market specifically, because like you said, we have a semblance of an industry, not necessarily an industry, right? Do you feel that film locally, meaning film shot locally, produced locally, about local teams and so on, can be profitable, meaning that you go to Caribbean cinemas, movie town on a weekend and you're able to see something like that? And what time frame do you see for something like that happen, if at all?
I'll say it this way, and I want Amilcar to give me his 2 points on this too. What we can see within the next 5 to 10 years is good locally directed and shot films being open to larger and larger markets, not being locally alone. But we may not be too close to an industry standard as yet, and I'll explain why. When we speak of something being industrialized, we speak of it being sustainable indefinitely. I don't think in the next 5 to 10 years we can have actors academies being set up to provide local directors with local actors, and you can have higher certification for film technicians, directors, technical directors, lighting specialists. I'm not seeing us having that infrastructure to sustain local film within the next 5 to 10 years. But what I could see those persons who have ventured into making it a reality getting closer and closer to the standard. And so we'll produce a lot more movies that will get international critiques and awards.
And on that same thing, Lyons, look at the King of Miami, Ali Simmons was, boy, why you scat me? Hey boy, the one I start, Shutters and Dancehall Queen. Nobody does critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
Those were successful regional films. Bim was a fairly successful film from Trinidad and Tobago. Santana using social media platform change. But the success of the film was there, and diasporic people from other islands claiming that as their heritage because that's how it's working in diaspora.
Within the wake of those critically acclaimed Jamaican films, you had African American blockbuster film Belly borrowing the prose from Caribbean films, which they were exposed to not from real Caribbean stories, but from the Third World Cup and from the Shutters.
And the false idea on that lands, what that scare me, when people try to make their team global, all pain and suffering is real and all love is real. Whether you're reading 1,000 Years in Solitude, Love in the Season of Cholera from Gabriel Marquez, whether you're reading Earl Lovelace, Dragon Can Dance, or you're reading some T.S. Eliot or Slumdog Millionaire, is another story about human ambition and hope. And the location was distinctly Indian. Even the expressions of it in a globalized context with the kind of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game and so on that people relate to. But stories of love and hurt, it is. In literature, Chinua Achebe never tried to make himself more American to be a successful writer. But he was highly published in the United States and in the UK. The point is creating a standard and a strong plot. Thematically, people buy into your thing. So I have this false idea that we're trying to be global to make myself less local, less Trinidadian. If our music could reach the same way, why should the film be any different? And I think that is where we are the sort of like be a bit more critical, and it's a self-doubt. And I think that is our biggest failure. Self-doubt and taking a risk, which requires a financial investment. And that's how much you believe in yourself as well.
You spoke about globalization and pulling teams and so on from different media and how to say, it puts out that image for us as Caribbean people, as Trinidadian people speaking specifically about God Loves the Fighter. Do you feel that, and this was probably one of the questions I think that was asked at the screening, do you feel that sufficiently God Loves the Fighter covered all the teams?
No. It was only one film. And the plot was very focused. The whole plot was based on God Loves the Fighter. And for the story to be followed, we had to choose a limited amount of fighters to highlight. So we had the character of Charlie, a man who is not really a gangster, but that is his environment. And although he's very intelligent, he just becomes the most intelligent among the dogs, because that intelligence does not elevate him to anywhere outside of his rules. That is one pros that we have, one Trinidadian pros. You have a Charlie in every ghetto. Then you have the Stone, the entrepreneur who didn't go bad, he was just always bad. And as much as you would see an entrepreneur in the legal world, putting in his grind and making his product and making his name, that is what Stone was doing. That's another story, that's another pose that we highlighted. And I could go on to all the other characters, but I wouldn't. I will tell you what we left out. We didn't have the politician. We didn't have the pros of how policy adds to the mess and how we view politicians. We have a whole history of that story from Calypso all the way up. We lament over politicians. That's a part of the Trinidadian story. And this is a criticism we got, a question we got at the screening we did at UE. Someone stood up and they said there was Mr. Odrick, but the film did not showcase any matriarch. It didn't showcase that female figure in a depressed community who would make sure that there would be some continuity in the values.
Of course.
And the answer was, sometimes that just don't exist.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
But another film may pick up from that guy and showcase another group of pros within which that story could be told. But in this story, we had to tell a limited context of the wider story.
Well, God Loves the Fighter was one of the few, and still is one of the few feature-length films we had in Trinidad and Tobago. Give us an idea of what it would take, let's say for example, to produce a feature-length film, or what it took to produce a feature-length film in Trinidad and Tobago.
That'll be a mess. For it to be true, had to be a mess. And why I say a mess, it can't start off with playwright or scriptwriter sitting behind a desk coming up with the entire plot and passing that on to a very visual director who could imagine how to interpret the script. And then he now does a casting and get some actors to play this. That mechanical pedagogy of filmmaking cannot work now.
Like more film is phenomenological.
It has to be organic. And that is why I said it has to be a mess. This film had to take 3 years because they understood that they couldn't come and cast one script and that could be the story. When these characters begin interpreting the script, you realize how limited your script is. And you, if you're a good producer, you know that you had to suspend filming. You suspend filming now because it seems as though we now discovering the script, or sometimes not even the script. We now discovering the syntax of the language that we want to use for the film. So God Loves the Fighter specifically had many defining moments in its production, where you would cast the hose and the American understanding of a prostitute and how to film a prostitute can't be the same for Caribbean prostitute. A Caribbean prostitute has a Caribbean prostitute character, and you have to learn the visuals of a Caribbean prostitute. You have to learn the tolerance of a Caribbean prostitute and artistically how to bring across a Caribbean prostitute. That is why the film took 10 years, took 3 years, because every time we filmed, we realized it wasn't sincere. And we had to let it happen organically.
Understanding that it took time and you're talking about the challenges that you all face, do you feel that the film has spread wide enough to say that you could leave a legacy, meaning a understanding within the local artistic community, let's say, if we call it that?
Beyond that, I have to tell you to keep looking. Next year will be what the film will do next year will give what happened this year new meaning to those who actually went and see the film. Because next year we will see the reception of it internationally, and already, because I I'm privy to things that you wouldn't know, internationally the reaction is unbelievable, and that should let Trinidadians know that it was really a ritual of showing it first to home, because we already know it would be big, and people have not people have. We've learned to kind of deal with the heartache of failing by bypassing home, because you know you will get rejected home. So if you have something that you know will bust in foreign first, you will do that. You just circumvent showing it home. You circumvent releasing your song home. Why? Why go through that? I know they will shelve it. Why go through that? I know they wouldn't appreciate it. But for the first time, Trinidadians will feel as though they had dibs on it. Yeah, I see it first. So when it hit Jamaica and it hit London and it hit Toronto, and that overwhelming response come back, you say, hey, why late? This one first.
I understand. My issue with Lyons, in particular, was I find it as a certain gaze and interpret the kind of Caribbean space and a kind of unilateral perspective on the ghetto. I don't know how you'll feel about that. I like how you bring the gender implications as well. As you know, it had a gender and ethnic kind of confusion in the minds of the local public. And I appreciate how you said like a ritual, right? Because there's a kind of commitment, you know, that even if you want it internationally, then hide and do it in a studio away. You bring it home and they'll take the rejection as, you know, not rejection, but the criticisms as necessary, and what you could do and look into what is practical to fix, and to do, you could do, and also the things that even you're aware of how the audience may view it at home in advance. So I think it's amazing. What I think God of the Fight that definitely did in terms of the stand, the production, in terms of the mobilization of the community around it, which was unique, is that they really create a platform for discussion on what can be done. And we saw what can be done. I think that is where it is, and definitely is a pioneer in that regard now. It's a pioneer. So to limit it as a understanding it for today or what you saw this year is a short-sighted vision. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
And understanding that God Loves the Fighter was really a moment to be proud for Trinidad and Tobago specifically, because the film festival is not only about our films. We have Haitian filmmakers, we have Cuban filmmakers, we have people who've been doing this shit for way longer than. As a matter of fact, I don't think at Trinidad, we never had a Trinidad feature film winning. Our documentaries come close, and even, you know, the foreign documentarians who come, they kind of get the accolades and the titles. And that shows the impartiality and the fairness of the festival. And for a local film to get 3 titles, that says that Trinidad and Tobago can produce films.
I'm glad you raised the topic of Cuba, Haiti, and all those other places who have been doing film for a long time.
Excellent too.
Right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Is it now that Trinidad and Tobago, barring language difficulties and so on, needs to now...
Do you see language difficulties with
meaning language, because that was one of the problems we had before in terms of international films coming to Trinidad and Tobago and being successful. You had foreign film festival, but it would only be geared to a particular community. Now with things like the film festival and so on taking place, and you have more local audiences going to just see, let's say for example, because of this unique mix that Trinidad and Tobago has, because of immigration and illegal and legal, right? Is it now that Trinidad can play a serious role in terms of revitalizing Caribbean film as a whole? When I say Caribbean, I mean Caribbean, Latin, and Spanish and English and French as well?
Definitely. But the way to do that is to show that Trinidad film contributes to the film festival, and the film festival contributes to television. If you understand what I'm saying?
Understand what you mean?
We host the film festival, but sometimes still we have limited entries in our own festival that we host in. Right? The way to make the festival definitive, and when I say definitive, if a film do make Trinidad Film Festival, it ain't saying nothing in the region. For us to get there, we have to have Trinidad filmmakers taking advantage of the film festivals, and the film festivals opening opportunities for film to be shown on Trinidad television. Once we have that, then we'll have films from not just the English-speaking Caribbean, but from the Caribbean, because they would see Trinidad as the film portal for the region.
I'm glad you raised the point of television, for example. Television is still seen as something that's very commercial and very based in profit.
Not Gael.
not Gael, but
that wasn't a shot, though.
Do you feel that film still has something to prove, or should it have at all anything to prove to?
I just think that the films that were being made here in Trinidad wasn't making enough noise. And the reason why I said that is I watched the short film Fish go viral on YouTube in a matter of hours. And we had to look at YouTube as being the new television. Why didn't we have a showing of Fish on television?
And to Lyons is like, we limit innovation to the concept. You're actually not as innovative as we think you are. Child of God, you are children of God, City of God. In Brazil was an innovative filming technique. But look at Netflix and cinema in America. They have these public debates on their industry and what survives and the business models. So you have Game of Thrones where people talk about binge shows. You watch one episode and they get hooked, and they come out every week. You remember before Family Matters, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek would run until the show done and everybody just too old to make a series again? Alright, it had a different model. I do this thing like a book. I come at a start and I come at an end. But you also have different House of Cards. They say, look, instead of dropping a show every week to try and get ads, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put one episode free and you buy the entire season. Risky. That is innovation. Breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience as part of your film. That is innovation. People everywhere else in the world looking for business models that work for them and their market. Your market is your market. Nothing else.
And you decide what your market is.
Exactly. And that is how we have to start being critical of that and seeing how it is ways we could innovate on it. And they always.
I was telling Muhammad the other day, right? I remember rushing back, because I didn't have television until like about 19. My parents decided that there was going to be no TV in the house. So if I had to get a blind, I had to go by Grand. I remember rushing home by my grandmother to see Men of Grey. Remember that? Men of Grey?
Yeah.
You know shit. It's too young.
We're being recorded.
Wayne Ellison.
With Hansley and Joda, we used to read news on
Yeah.
TTT. We say, shit, they have shooting, and they do it here in Trinidad. That was unbelievable. That we would have a movie made in Trinidad, just like the other movies TTT they show on Saturday night.
Yeah.
That was some exciting shit. And we just when we get older, we just forget that things that excite children would always excite children. If local television promote and announce that they will be showing a local film, children would watch it.
And
They would.
yeah.
And adults would watch it.
Yeah.
Granny who don't want to see no other channel but TV6, even when it have weather for 2 hours, she will watch it.
And I also support West Indies cricket because they win. Not just because I'm a West Indian. No, the thing about local film. Just because it's from here, I don't mean it's good. I don't mean I have to privilege it naturally. But look at the chocolate you just buy for your Valentine.
And that is why no other film made it to local television. And we just make real films there.
Yeah.
Just make real films there.
Yeah.
But
But look at Barefoot.
when they show Jen,
Look at Barefoot. Is the product. Look at Barefoot. To the point where we even thought it was foreign. Because the packaging was good. And the juice tastes good. But the packaging was almost excellent at that point in time. And you appreciate the product more. There are different layers of appreciation. So it is with film. So it is with any product. And what we need to understand ourselves, because this is about culture. When we produce a cultural product, in your mind you have to have an idea how it is to be consumed. And what
because
is
you
good.
have no promise that you would be consumed.
Exactly.
Because you have no automatic brand loyalty.
More or less, this is just like a final point. You spoke about Men on Grey, somewhat international being filmed here. There's another film that created some level of buzz in terms of the local film industry as well. This came probably the year before, which was Home Again, right? Well, it covered really Jamaican themes, but the climate in Trinidad and Tobago, probably similar, I don't know what you would say. Landscape and so on meant that it was shot here, Jamaican story shot here. Is this something in terms of just creating the environment, an enabling environment where people can do something like that? Is that something you feel that we must do in order for the entire industry or what semblance that we have to?
That is what makes an industry.
Where everyone has snowy mountain.
What makes an industry is I may not be the one doing it, but I could make it happen.
Oh my god, you just said. Nokia didn't make cell phones at first.
That is an industry.
Yeah.
So Hollywood will always be open to anime producers because fucking Americans can't draw like Japanese. But to make your anime season bigger than the 100,000 other Japanese anime artists, come to Hollywood, sell it, pitch it.
You're right.
We would be responsible for making it a blockbuster.
Exactly.
So if Trinidad filmmakers are still in their formative stages, if we can at least facilitate film being done by whomever want to come and do a film, then the idea will go out, hey, films can be done in Trinidad. Somebody else come in and do it.
I agree with you. Industry is looking at the means of production and actually taking a checklist in terms of what you have. And that is so important in the sense that Silicon Valley is about hardware and software. It's also about venture capitalists. It's also about having incubators where young people can set up companies and infrastructure for research. That is an industry where you try on it, not just one degree program, not just about a festival, which are aspects of it that they're trying to do it, because instead of trying to find causality, you have to look in a package of all these events happen that could tilt something in a favor. Right? They must happen at the same point in time. And that is how it happens. And there's a policy level as which you identify, which makes the technology cheaper.
Okay. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for the discussion. You all gave us almost too much content for this part, but it's very good anyway.
Never too much, never too much.
Never too much. Thanks very much. And that's it basically for the discussion.